Welcome to American Dream Latin Souls. I'm Daniel Ortiz, and today my guest is entrepreneur Fran Maier. Fran, welcome to our program.
Thanks so much for having me today, Daniel.
Now, Fran, you're a typical serial entrepreneur. When we talk about entrepreneurship, we make a distinction between business owners who run a business, sometimes for generations. Entrepreneurs, a little bit different breed. They start many businesses, and so typical serial entrepreneur. I'm excited to have you in the program.
Thank
You've got a great story. Before we get into your story, let me just tell our audience a little bit about you. First of all, Matchcom.
So fun, right?
Well, it's an iconic business.
Yes.
I mean, in the information age, the internet age, Match.com is an iconic business. You are a founder of that, and we'll talk about that story. But I'm excited about that part.
Good.
And but right now, you are currently working with many companies. You're doing consulting.
Consulting, advising, coaching.
Okay.
Sit on a few boards.
And a few boards, okay. So in 2010, you were named the top 25 women in tech in Silicon Valley.
That was fun.
That was fun. And you are, in 2011, the San Francisco Business Times named you among the 150 most influential business women in the Bay Area, San Francisco, which is Silicon Valley, which I think is an amazing feat for Latina from a small town in New Mexico.
Absolutely. Lots of great company in that list, too.
Okay, all right. But, kudos to you for being there. And you have a lot of other awards, and we talk about that in your journey. But before we get into that, Fran, what is your American dream, and what does it mean to you?
Well, that's a really fun question, and I'd say that, like any entrepreneur, the ability to make your own schedule, to pursue what you want to do, potentially get the financial rewards that you can live the way you live, that's pretty standard. But I'd say for me, there's two other things. One, when I first got into the internet, it was because, wow, this is going to change everything. And I saw it from a marketing perspective that the internet was going to change everything, and of course it has. And the second thing, I think this is more my values as I've grown as an entrepreneur and worked with other entrepreneurs. I'm into impact.
Okay.
You
want to make a difference in the world.
I want to make a difference. Clearly, Match.com, online dating, has made a tremendous difference in the world.
I want you to hold that thought, because Match.com is right now, I mean, it's virtually everywhere. Most people have heard about it, people who are single and dating, and it's helped so many people, of course. But I remember when online dating first came in the information age, in the internet age, it had this kind of...
Oh, it was sleazy.
People were like, yeah, you're going to meet online.
Absolutely.
And so you took a big risk, and that's part of being an entrepreneur. But let's get back to your American dream for a moment here. You mentioned something about freedom. One of the core values of entrepreneurs is freedom, isn't it?
Absolutely. You want to be able to go after what you want to do. You want to do it your way. You want to have your vision. I think in a lot of ways, an entrepreneur is very much a creative process as well. And
entrepreneurs they're creators. They create businesses out of an idea, out of thin air.
And I count 5 in my background, so that's pretty exciting.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your background before we get into the business. Fran Maier, your maiden name is Alaca, I believe.
That's right.
What is your Hispanic background, or family background?
My mom is multi-generational New Mexican, and my father is a first-generation Italian.
Okay.
And so my mom said, actually, they're both Latin. I was like, okay, that sounds good.
Right. So it means that makes you kind of feisty, I would think.
Absolutely.
I can say that without getting into
no problems at all.
Okay.
And my parents did not come from very well, my dad was an orphan at a young age, and my mom lost her father at a young age. But they grew up in New Mexico at a time, or grew as adults in New Mexico at a time where there was a lot of growth. My dad was in sales. Eventually, my mom became a teacher, and they did well.
Okay. So did your father influence your entrepreneurial background?
I think in a couple of important ways. My dad is very much a consummate salesman, and he took sales as very much a profession, and I would be in the car with him, and he'd play cassette tapes or maybe even 8 tracks on how to be a better salesperson. So he always had
inspirational stuff.
Those kind of things. So he was always telling me the importance of a positive mental attitude, for example. And I think in the second way, my dad loved technology, and I remember one time he brought home a calculator, and all it did was add, subtract, divide, multiply. cost him like $1,000, and this is a long time ago.
Right.
And I think I
remember
took that
those
from
Hewlett-Packard
him.
HP12C.
Oh yeah, he would have had one really early.
Yeah, so he's an early adapter.
He's an early adopter, and I was always an early adopter as well.
All right. So let's talk about your business background. How many businesses have you started and been involved with? And we'll talk about, I want to go into the Match.com story.
Okay, so Match.com was my first internet startup.
Okay.
Then I went to women.com and bluelight.com.
Okay.
And then Trustee.
Okay. So Match.com, how did that start? And how long ago was this?
I don't even want to share how long ago it was. It was almost 20 years ago.
Okay.
In fact,
it's hard to believe now, that we lived in an age at one time when the internet did not exist. I mean, it's become such part of our lives, and Google's become a verb. Google this, Google that. Of course. And and again, going back to dating, when it started. These dating sites actually started in the newspapers, right? So
in the late 90s or early to mid 90s, most people were doing online dating through 900 number personals.
900 number personals.
And they were kind of sleazy. Okay. So newspapers would even sort of seed and say really sort of.
So they'd call a 900 number and they'd have to pay for the call.
They'd have to pay for the call.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of.
So when I got into Match.com, I ran into the founder of a company called Electric Classifieds. Electric Classifieds' first proof of concept was to have Match.com, and we wanted, as a company, get the newspapers to move their classified advertising online.
Okay.
And Gary Kremen, is very well known, and he and I went to business school at Stanford.
Okay.
And he knew that I had spent some time at Clorox Company, and Clorox is a very good company to learn sort of your postgraduate degree in marketing, advertising, and all those things. And at the time I was working at AAA, and I had my first AOL account, saw the World Wide Web for the first time, was reading this book about the one-to-one future, which was talking about how you could use fax and audio text to reach people. And once I saw the internet, I was convinced. So you saw it. You just saw it. This was going to change everything.
This is one of the traits of an entrepreneur. We talked about this earlier before we started. I don't believe that you can make an entrepreneur. You can, learn some skills as an entrepreneur, but I think you just are born entrepreneurial. And one of the visions, one of the keys of entrepreneurship, in addition to risk-taking, is the vision. Is
Absolutely.
Seeing something that doesn't exist, but you just know.
Just totally new. And then
it's instinct, isn't it?
Well, I look back on it now, and to me it's obvious, but I guess, yeah. And there's a lot of hustle, and I'll tell you, Gary asked me, he said, well, why don't you come by and see the operation? And there was like 3 other employees, one investor and a couple of engineers. And I showed up with some Chinese food. Because I knew they were working late, and it's like, okay, hey, I'll bring some food over. And that kind of little.
They were already involved in the online dating?
No, nothing had been launched, but this was the idea of Electric Classifieds, and they wanted to launch Match.com. And this was very late in 1994.
Electric
Classifieds.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not around.
Okay.
And that story is a different one. But in any case, I came on and I launched Match.com at the beginning of 1995.
Okay.
And we got press in Valentine's Day 1995. Now, a couple of things.
Did you launch it nationally initially? Or?
We did, but we really focused on San Francisco market, and that's one of the things that often happens is you've got to capture a market. And we want to capture that market because that's where the investors and the influencers, even then as they are now, are. And I talk a lot about what made Match special, and a couple of things I think made a big difference. And sometimes I talk to audiences and they'll tell me, oh, we met on Match.com, it's fabulous, or their parents and so on. And I ask the audience, well, how many of you have ever checked the weight box and had to put your weight on an online dating profile? No hands come up, because I say because of me. If we were interested in marketing to women, and that was the strategy for Match.com, was to reach women, and we could get more women, make it safe. Our 3 words were safe, anonymous, and fun.
Okay.
And if we could get women to come to Match.com, we all knew the men would follow. And so in terms of making something that is for both men and women, I think a woman's perspective really made a big difference. Not just in the weight question and similar questions like that, but also in the business model. The initial idea was to do it, was to charge people like 10 cents per email, right? And I had just been working at AAA on the membership model, and I knew that membership means something. Membership elevates the status, and by having a membership,
American Express, they don't call them cardholders, they call them members.
Right? And so the idea was to elevate, because we want to be different from those 900 personals.
Okay.
We want it to be a clean, well-lit place. We want to give both men and women a way to connect.
Now, were there other dating sites going on at the same time?
There were AOL chat rooms that were very much focused on romance. And I think the keys to Match.com's success was that strategy of a clean, well-lit place that women would come to. I think it was getting early on the PR and playing that up.
Okay. So what's the story then? What was your involvement? You were there initially?
I was there for 3 years, and Electric Classifieds was not doing very well. Match.com was doing very, very well. In fact, I laugh to share this, but we were cash flow positive. And as you know, you don't ever try and run a social network as cash flow positive. You just want to grow and get critical mass.
Right.
And of course, you know, by being early in 1995, that's always a good thing. If you could get into a market early and establish your position, that makes a very big difference.
One of the keys of businesses and marketing is, I think Al Rice and Jack Trout wrote a book called 28 or 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. The first rule is be first in your category.
Right, and while we may not have been first, we were first to sort of break through.
Right.
And that has made a tremendous difference. So we sold Match.com for less than $10 million to put the money into Electric Classifieds. And just to date this, eBay and Craigslist were not around at that time.
Okay.
My mistake when we sold Match.com was I didn't buy it, essentially, and get the investors and take it to the next level. And frankly,
well, at that time, I mean, $10 million is a lot of money.
No,
I mean, today.
It was a year later. It sold for $70 million to Ticketmaster, and now it's part of IAC, and it's probably worth in excess of $1 billion.
Wow.
And I got a couple. My risk taking failed me. I didn't take that step.
Right.
And I have to say, part of it is, as a woman, sometimes it's hard. I think it's more difficult.
That's what I could consider. You consider a failure, but it's a successful failure. I mean, you did sell out for $10 million, whatever your portion of that was.
I got nothing. I got a couple of bonuses for helping with the transition.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh.
But no, you can't take that away. I do see it as a success. I helped build one of the most successful brands on the internet, and my reputation and my friendships and network that I established have served me well over the years.
Sure. And again, the entrepreneur journey is not about, you know, the one business. It's about the next business. It's about cashing out and moving on.
Right.
And so forth. So I think we've got a visual here about your complete journey, starting off when you started and to where you're at now. What is the takeaway there from your experience with Match?
You have to keep on moving forward, you know? So kind of the concept of sunk costs, what you've done in the past is good, but let's keep on finding new things and new opportunities.
Well, you obviously have done that. Can we get that visual back there? We've got your journey here. This is your journey from Clorox, is that 1999?
No, Clorox was way early. That was from 89 to 93, then AAA for just about a year. And in those two segments, I had my two sons, so that's good. Then Match.com, and that's the original logo.
Okay.
Of course, it's changed now, but I think it's kind of fun to see what it looks like way back then.
Sure.
Women.com was my next, so after a Match, I went to Women.com. And at the time, there were only a few sites really catering to women and how to parenting, childcare, marriage, romance, career work.
You were able to secure that domain name, and usually, you know, if you get a domain name, that by itself, if it's the right name, is gold. Just having the name itself. I mean, I got LatinoSuccess.com.
Oh, great!
And I've got my own name, Daniel.com.
Yeah, it's always good.
You know, so that by itself is gold. So, again, you moved on.
And at Match.com, Women.com, and Blue
What did you
Light,
do with Women.com?
I was mostly the chief marketing officer or business development person.
Okay. So what happened or what became of Women.com?
Women.com went public in 1999, but a little bit late. So by the time the dot-com crash, it was not quite the money in the pocket that we had hoped.
Okay.
You know, I call Match.com, Women.com a Blue Light Match.com, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because Match is still around and made a big difference. Women.com, I think we were a little bit too focused on going public and we sort of lost our way. So sort of the too bad. And
would you say that you maybe overcorrected from your experience in Match, going public?
No, I think it was just the time. It was 1999 and things were pretty hot in the IPO world. And then Bluelight.com was a combination of Kmart and SoftBank and essentially Yahoo. And the initial, I had a $100 million marketing budget at Bluelight.com.
Is that right?
Until everything crashed.
Oh, wow.
And then that was kind of, those were the crazy years.
Bubble burst?
Yeah, dot-com bubble burst. And that was, and Kmart ran into some issues, and of course one of Kmart's partners was Martha Stewart, and she ran into some issues. So I call it trifecta. So then I joined Trustee, and at the time Trustee was a nonprofit.
So tell us what does Trustee do?
Trustee certifies the privacy practices and provides tools for companies to understand what kind of information they're collecting and potentially sharing with other entities.
Okay, so in English, what does that do? What is that?
We made sure that helps consumers understand the privacy issues that they're facing with the internet. And we all know that's a very complex and big issue.
So, and why the nonprofit model for that?
I joined it after it was already established, and it was established in 1997. And I think they want to get the big players in the industry, Microsoft, at the time AOL, and others together to come up with some rules for privacy, with the thinking being that if consumers didn't feel comfortable about putting their information on the internet, then really e-commerce and everything we could do would slow down. They started in 1997. I was at Match.com. Anytime I could build Match.com's brand, I would do it. And so I was one of the first customers for the new Trustee mark. And you could see the Trustee mark on thousands of websites all over the place.
So that's still ongoing?
Oh, very much so.
Okay, all right.
But it's ongoing, though, because after I took it over as a nonprofit, a few years later, I decided that it needed to be a for-profit. That we were mostly competing with security and other kind of privacy companies that were formed as for-profit. We were charging our customers for the certification, and the privacy issues were getting larger and more diverse. So things like behavioral advertising, mobile privacy, the Internet of Things. You could see all this stuff coming down the pike, and as a nonprofit and a fairly young nonprofit, we did not have the capital to invest. We didn't have the capital to hire engineers or hire marketing people or really do much in sales.
That's one of the challenges of entrepreneurship. You know, we have the idea oftentimes, and nothing more. And then so we get into the business, entrepreneurs get into the business and they do the best they can, but cash flow and financing are huge issues.
So it was, my board of directors were mostly privacy lawyers, and their risk profile is not necessarily the same as an entrepreneur. and they didn't really understand
you
why.
You want to kill a deal, bring a lawyer on board.
Well, it depends on the kind.
That's their role.
Right.
But you're right. They're always advising caution. I mean, it's always caution.
And so, fast forwarding, it's 1997. Trustee, which almost went down into oblivion in 2001 because of the dot-com crash. I had built up the revenues organically without outside capital to close to $6 million. I had great clients, everybody from IBM and Intel and pharmaceuticals and smaller companies. And I had a great brand name with the Trustee. People have good awareness of it. But I had no capital. And I asked my board if I could they come up with money? And we did a strategy session, and basically the board members, were no. And I didn't think I was going to quit. And the second, I call this my do-over. With Match.com, I didn't reach out to people I know and ask them, what do you think I should do? How could I do this better? But with Trustee, I did. I called some friends. I called Gary, who helped me with Match.com. I talked to my neighbor who had worked for a venture capital firm. I talked to some other people. And they basically said, you shouldn't quit. There's a lot of good opportunity here. You've got to help convince them, the board, that's time to take it for profit. And then you could go to the venture capital community and raise money. And what I did do is I did quit. And I told the board, I really can't stay with Trustee anymore because I'm afraid without capital we'll be less successful.
Well, that's one of the
and
challenges.
I called their bluff.
That's one of the challenges for entrepreneurs. We're independent people. I mean, and we generally, are called mavericks or whatever, but we generally don't work in an environment that holds us back. And of course, a board of directors, part of their role is to help manage and help rein in these crazy entrepreneurs who sometimes go off the deep end. But that's a struggle sometimes, because a true entrepreneur doesn't want to be limited. We want to grow, we want to go to the next level.
Absolutely. And so I kind of quit, and they of course said, well, what will it take to keep you? I said, I want to go turn it to a for-profit. I want to get capital. I'm confident I can do it. And obviously I need your permission. And they actually this was the same year that we were celebrating our 10-year anniversary, Trustee's 10-year anniversary. We had a big gala. And what they came back with is, okay, you could do it. You need to talk to our clients and see how they feel about it. You need to talk to
so
the Federal Trade.
What's the end result of this?
I raised first round $10 million from Excel, which is one of the...
private.
Yeah, we did go private.
Okay.
I raised it from Excel, which is one of the largest and most important and influential VC firms. And then the recession happened.
Okay.
But during that time, we were able to build the team, build the engineering, and Trustee right now is, much, much larger, probably 150 employees, including a group of employees in the Philippines.
Okay, so
and
you're
it's
no
doing
longer
really well.
with that?
No, I left after working. We hired a new CEO who came out of VeriSign, so had a lot of good experience and skills. I worked with him for a couple of years as president and board chair. And now, since early 2012, I've been mostly advising other entrepreneurs, mostly female, but not only. Okay,
let's talk about that. Your role as a female entrepreneur, because according to the last census, Hispanics are starting businesses at a rate 4 times faster than the population at large, but Hispanic women, Latinas, are 10 times more likely to start a business. And obviously, you've done all of this. And raised a family at the same time.
Yeah.
What are the challenges in that? And I think you got some photos of your sons. What role do they play? What role does family play in your entrepreneurial journey?
I think my sons had a good time knowing that their mom was an entrepreneur. They had some opportunities to share my experience and probably learn from it. My older one studied computer science and economics and is now working as a web developer in Washington, D.C. And my younger son, the one to the right, he's also studying computer science at Santa Clara University. So I think...
So what role did as a mother, played in your entrepreneurship? But because that can be challenging, of course.
It was definitely challenging, and I would say it was especially challenging 20 years ago compared to now. I think a lot of female entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs in general, who are well funded, the food gets brought to them.
Right.
The dry cleaning truck is downstairs. Yeah, no, it's a different world. I think it's very difficult to be a female entrepreneur. You're right. Women start more businesses than men in general.
Yes,
and so I'm not surprised Latina women do a very good job with it. But oftentimes women don't get the capital for their business and they have a hard time raising it. Only 4% of venture capital partners are female.
Okay.
So if you have a product that's aimed to the female market, some of those venture capital men just won't get it and are not into it, or don't even want to. They don't necessarily want to sit in a boardroom and talk about, jewelry or bras or shapewear. What everybody's missing is women are the primary purchasers, not just for the family, but increasingly for the business. Because women are graduating college 60% compared to 40% for men.
Yeah, they passed that ratio several years ago.
Yeah, and it's starting now. They're in middle management. Now they're the ones who are really having a big influence in the corporations that they're in.
Is it more difficult for a woman? I think I read an article about this, or it made the national news. Is it more difficult for women to ask for money or to be persistent? Men, we tend to be more aggressive and women, for whatever reason, tend not to be? Is there the approach?
I think that Sheryl Sandberg in her book Lean In really got to it.
Okay.
Tell
us about that.
And prior to that, I wrote something called Women Need to Do the Deal. Because I had observed at reunions like the business school reunion at Stanford, women would talk to other women about their families and vacations, and the guys would talk about families and golf trips, but the guys were talking more about business and the deal they did together. And I felt that women have not been doing the deal. And I think that's one of the things that women fail to do as well as men, is the networking, making their friendships also business partnerships of one kind of another, supporting each other. Women in the past have not done that as well. I think that's really changing. And the whole idea of leaning in, doing the deal, ask for what you want. I had a friend recently who was in negotiation for a job, and there's one person she didn't connect with. And I said to her, well, what would a guy do? And she said, oh, okay, I'll call him. And,
Okay.
And it turned out well.
So that's a challenge.
Totally a challenge. Okay. And I think early in my career at Matchcom, my sons at the time were very young. The resources to Match.com were decreasing from electric classifieds. And I kind of felt a little bit beat up, and I was exhausted for sure. And I think it was a combination of that kind of exhaustion and that held me back from asking for what I really should have done.
Okay.
But 10 years later, older children, a little bit wiser for the wear,
Sure.
I knew what to do.
Very good, very good. So, fascinating story. I wish we had more time
we're
to
done?
discuss it. We're almost done. We've got about a minute left. So in that minute that we do have left, Fran, what advice would you give to anybody, an entrepreneur, particularly any female entrepreneur, Latina, who has an idea for a business or wants to succeed in their career? What advice do you have?
Well, obviously, I'd like to say go for it, and I think people need to have a broader understanding of what risk is.
Okay.
Taking risks sometimes can be stupid, sometimes can be extremely smart. And if you're well prepared, if you know the business, if you have the education, if you have the connections, those kind of things don't seem to be risk after all. It's almost more risky not to do it.
That's a typical entrepreneur's vision, is we see risk differently from the population at large. And you're right, sometimes it's riskier not to do something than to do something in our mind, right? And we get the things we don't do often than the things we do.
Right, and I would say right now is a wonderful time to be an entrepreneur. It doesn't necessarily cost all that much capital. I think there's a lot of people who are willing to help, especially female entrepreneurs. And I think states, not just California, but New Mexico and other places are really ready to invest in helping entrepreneurs be successful.
Very good.
So you have to go for it.
Okay, go for it. Right. Well, thank you, Fran, for your business. Very interesting story. We wish you much success in your future endeavors. And I'd like to thank our audience for joining us on this edition of American Dream Latin Souls. Be sure to visit us online at latinosuccess.com.